Welcome to Podcast King. Today we're talking about Dan Bongino, a former Secret Service agent who has become one of the most popular voices in political podcasting. With his direct and energetic style, Bongino has captivated millions of listeners with his daily program, The Dan Bongino Show. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Podcast King Genius and join us for our next episode. Thanks for listening.
Ever get the feeling like you're hearing the same name pop up everywhere? Lately, it's been Dan Bongino for me.
Yeah?
Maybe from those fiery cable news appearances he does. Or maybe his podcast keeps popping up, you know. But think about it. This is a guy who went from protecting presidents to practically being a media mogul. I mean, from the actual Secret Service to this. How do you pull that off?
Well, it really is a fascinating story. I think it's the combination of a really compelling personal story and some pretty savvy media strategy on his end.
So let's rewind a bit because it's a wild ride.
Okay.
Before we get to the podcast and the headlines and all that, we got to talk about those early years, right? Over a decade in the Secret Service, serving under Presidents Bush and Obama, that's a front row seat to history if I've ever heard of one.
Talk about an insider's view, right?
You have to wonder about the unique perspective someone like that, like Bongino gains working in those environments.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that experience, it's foundational to his whole brand. And it's not just that he's got opinions on security or law enforcement, it's that he's speaking from firsthand knowledge. Most commentators, they just can't match that.
Right.
And for a lot of people, audiences who are, let's say, disillusioned with who they see as, elites, that's incredibly potent.
And he doesn't just leave the service and fade away either. This guy, he becomes an NYPD officer. We're not talking about someone who shies away from, intensity and pressure.
Yeah, no, not at all. And, when you look at how he presents himself, the direct approach, no pretense, and he's totally willing to, to really dig into the weeds on these complex issues. It all goes back to those formative experiences. He's drawing a straight line from that background to how he sees the world, and that resonates with people.
Totally. It's like he's saying, I've been there, I've seen it, this is how the game is played. But it's not like his path to, becoming this media commentator was a straight shot. He went into politics first.
Right. Bongino ran for office a few times. He ran for Senate, then the House, but never got that win.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's tempting to look at those campaigns and just, write him off as failures.
Yeah.
But honestly, they were crucial to him developing into the communicator he is today.
Oh, that's interesting. So, he was learning how to get his message across, learning to connect with audiences, building a base. Those are skills you can't just learn overnight.
Exactly. It was like political boot camp. He figures out his arguments, refines how he delivers them, figures out what works, what doesn't. So by the time he actually launches his podcast, he's been through the fire, he's dealt with public scrutiny, and that experience, turns out, it was invaluable.
It really makes you think about how those campaigns, win or lose, kind of set the stage. Because by 2019, when Bongino starts the Dan Bongino Show, the podcasting world had exploded. Smartphones everywhere. People want their information instantly. And here comes Bongino with this very direct, very unfiltered style that, traditional media couldn't really touch.
Yeah, and it's not even just the timing, it's the whole format. Podcasts just have this inherent intimacy. It's almost like you're having a one-on-one conversation with the host. And Bongino, he just gets that, His background, his whole approach, he creates that connection so well.
Oh, he does not hold back. He goes right for the big issues. Government overreach, media bias, election stuff, you name it, he's talking about it. And he really gets into it, too. The details,
Yeah.
I think people like that.
Oh, for sure. It's that willingness to, really break down these complex topics. It sets him apart. A lot of these commentators, they just do the sound bites and the hot takes. But Bongino will take an hour to unpack one news story.
Yeah.
He's connecting the dots.
Right.
He's saying, this is the real agenda.
You can tell he believes it, too. Really believes it. There's no faking that kind of intensity.
And that's huge. For people who feel their concerns aren't being taken seriously by, the mainstream media, Bongino is validating. He's tapping into this deep well of frustration, distrust of all these institutions. He's giving them a voice.
He's not just reflecting it, though. He amps it up, too. Which brings us to that YouTube situation that was big.
Yeah, it really highlighted how, building your platform on someone else's terms can really backfire.
Right.
I mean, he had a massive YouTube following, but that style that got him there, that in-your-face style, it was bound to, clash with the rules.
Yeah. He got hit with that suspension. They cited policy violations, and boom, suddenly Bongino is the poster boy for big tech censorship.
And that's where his, what do you call it, media savvy. That's where it really shows.
Yeah.
He doesn't back down at all.
Yeah.
Instead of backing down, he doubles down. He makes it his whole thing. Free speech, he turns this negative, getting kicked off YouTube, he turns it into like a rallying cry, and it works. It just brings him closer to his audience.
Risky, though, wasn't it? I mean, YouTube, it's a giant. Walking away from that kind of reach, that could have been it.
Oh, for sure. Could have been disastrous. But I think Bongino knew something that a lot of people miss. His audience. They weren't just casually listening. They were bought in, the message, the worldview, all of it. That kind of trust, that loyalty, that's bigger than one platform, right?
And he doesn't just, walk away. He goes to Rumble.
Right.
Which, if you don't know, is like the opposite of YouTube when it comes to what you can and can't say. It felt like a big risk at the time.
Yeah, but for him, it wasn't just like finding somewhere new for the show.
More than that, right?
Way more. It was philosophical.
Yeah.
It just cemented that whole image, the fighter taking on censorship, all of that.
Yeah.
And for his audience, man, they ate it up.
It's like they were already worried about big tech anyway.
Exactly.
And this just proved it.
100%.
So he takes a negative and spins it into like a massive positive for his brand. It's kind of genius.
Totally. And you know what it reminds me of? It's part of this larger trend. These independent creators, they're building their own platforms now, right? Their own rules, connecting directly with their people. And it's working, especially now when nobody trusts the what's the word, like the old way of doing things.
Yeah, the institutions, exactly. So, okay, when we look back at Bongino and it's a wild story, what are the big takeaways? Whether you love the guy, hate him, whatever, what can we learn?
Well, I think, first off, authenticity, that's huge. Doesn't mean you got to agree with everything he says, but you can't fake that passion, that like conviction,
You can tell he means it.
100%. And in a media landscape where everything's so polished, that's huge.
Totally.
The other thing is adaptability. Bongino, he saw what was up, the shift to digital podcasts. He didn't fight it. He was like, okay, this is happening. Let's go.
He saw the wave and hopped on.
Exactly. And the last thing, this one's a little, it's Bongino. Don't shy away from controversy. Obviously, just being controversial for no reason, that backfires. But he gets that tapping into strong emotions, challenging how it is. Even if people get upset, sometimes that's what gets you noticed.
It's like that saying, any publicity is good publicity.
Exactly. Bongino's a fascinating case study. You can love him, you can hate him, but he really flipped the script. And honestly, it makes you think, if more and more people get their news this way from these independent guys, what happens to, the truth? Do we all just end up in our own little bubbles?
Big questions, no easy answers, but that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right? We started with this guy, Bongino, and now look, it's way bigger than that.
It always is.
That's the power of a good story, right? It makes you think. And we'll keep bringing you those stories. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions. We'll be here to help you make sense of it all.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to get notified of our latest episodes. See you next time on Podcast King.